Hi everybody. Well, it is a beautiful, sunny, very windy morning in Northern California, where I have been doing most of my filming for this gathering. And I wanted to start by just introducing you to me, who I am and what I do, and why I am putting this forward for you guys. So some of you are folks who know me, some of you are folks who follow me on social media, or who saw me on Alone, or know a little bit about me. But just to kind of round that out, because I know there are a lot of folks who I've never interacted with here. So I grew up in rural Northern California to two parents who spent a lot of time outdoors, both of them. I grew up hiking and, getting to know the wildflowers and the birds around me. But I also grew up in a, standard kind of American household and, not super wild, rural, but not wild. I grew up in a gated community that was built around a golf course. And so some of my wild time was walking around the golf course after dark, So I just want to encourage that wherever you are, you can find that for yourself. I did, and, I have taken it and run with it. So I was always someone who was fascinated with handcrafts and doing things for myself, and with olden times. I wished that I had grown up before European contact and that I got to be on the land as Native Americans were. I was fascinated with Homestead era. The games of my childhood were pretending I was out on the land foraging for food. And, I wasn't raised with access to those things to where I didn't know that those were actually possible for me to do in this day and age. And being someone who grew up spending a lot of time in nature, I was very engaged with the living landscape around me. And as soon as I started taking classes in botany in junior high, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a biologist. I wanted to study the natural world. And I did go on to do that. So I have both an education in the sciences, a degree in biology and environmental studies. And then in my 20s, I went to grad school and have a master's in environmental science. So I do have this strong science background, and that will probably be obvious in some of the teachings and certainly in the plants class, because botany was one of my focuses for my graduate studies. But I also had this drive to learn to make and do, and those two things came together really beautifully for me in college, where I was introduced to backpacking and field courses, and through that into folks who had been to some of the skills gatherings that I now have been teaching at for well over 20 years. And that meant that I was able to go to a gathering, Rabbit Stick Rendezvous, where I met people who were teaching ancestral skills for the first time, and saw that in fact these skills still exist. They are not from out of history. They are still available to us. So from when I learned that at age 19, I threw myself into learning as much as I could, spending a lot of time, living out on land with people, doing these, gathering wild food, tanning hides, throwing myself into as many skills as possible. And I've lived a pretty non-conventional life. I have not always lived totally wild. I've done a lot of different things in my day, but I've always had that thread of, oh, there's a scrub jay, of making and doing and connecting with wild places and spending a lot of time outside. Whether that looked like, living off grid and doing a lot of hunting to survive in Wisconsin, or living on another off-grid homestead on a mountaintop in Oregon and growing most of my food, or, doing Stone Age trips, or living in a standard house so I could go to graduate school so I could study entomology and botany and the way plants and insects interact. So it's looked a lot of different things, and I expect it probably will for most of you too. But another passion of mine is teaching and sharing. I've always been someone who feels, a real call to change the world for the better and to reach out and share with people. And I think because I have a very detail-oriented mind and I really need to understand processes in order to learn them, I teach in a way that is very detail-oriented and kind of breaks things down and looks at the bigger picture as well as the small pieces, and wants you to understand the why, not just the how. So that is my teaching style. And all of those things have come together to lead to a career in teaching ancestral skills. So a lot of my life I travel around to different skills gatherings and share a lot of the skills that I have put together over the course of many decades in these things. So that is my background, and You know, my goal is to make the skills that we evolved to use for our daily lives as available to as many people as possible. So, you know, the internet thing has been pretty new to me, and that has really mostly been just since being on Alone and getting all of this training in filming myself. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, my whole goal in life is to spread these skills to as many people as possible, and I can only meet so many people in person. So my YouTube channel and courses like this have been, you know, growing out of that desire to spread the skills to as many people as possible, because I think it's important for folks to have access to them, and that has felt true to me for a long time. But then all of a sudden coronavirus came, and the whole world realized, oh my God, I need to know these things. I might not have the store around the corner tomorrow or next week or next year. I need to have more skills myself. So it was a beautiful coming together of this time of me having more media presence and more capacity to film and share in that way, and the world suddenly having a need for it and a need to do it in the comfort of our own living rooms. It also feels important to mention that I don't think of myself as a survival skills instructor. Certainly, it's very true that a lot of the skills that I teach are very relatable to survival. I feel like the survival mentality is often coming from a panic and fear-based place, and the woods are out to get me, and how do I survive them place, as opposed to surthrival, and how do I be in a beautiful way in a wild environment. And survival is more geared towards getting rescued, whereas, you know, long-term wilderness living is about being and making a home and creating a beautiful life in a wild environment. And that is much more the way I tend to take things. So yes, a lot of the things that we're going to be covering and teaching are survival skills, but you'll hear me referring to ancestral skills and bushcraft skills a lot more than survival, because that is direction that I come to with these. How can these things improve my already beautiful life, as opposed to how can they keep me from, you know, succumbing in a horrible wilderness situation? I'm all about seeing the woods and the wilderness as home and a beautiful place for me to be, and not having this antagonistic relationship with the woods out to get me and nature red in tooth and claw and everything is dangerous and wants to do me harm. So that's how I'm going to be tweaking things. So there you have the inspiration for the Buckskin Skills Gathering and a little bit of background on me. So let's go into the introduction to the gathering itself, and yeah, let's launch forward.